Hey, welcome in, everybody. Good evening to you. Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. We are right now 58 minutes or so away from tip-off of Missouri and Mississippi State in Starkville. Tigers are ranked number 13 in the country, coming off a win over Arkansas. Mississippi State coming off a double OT loss to Kentucky. We're going to talk a little bit about the matchup, get you set for tip-off, look around the SEC, talk about the series history. But mostly what we want to do is talk to you guys and hear from you guys. And Jared is the first one in the comments tonight. And Adam is also here. And we're going to start with what Adam brings up. It seems like we always struggle with Mississippi State. Hopefully we change that tonight. And, I remember some terribly painful games. There was a Kim Anderson game against Mississippi State. Don't get me wrong. They were all painful. That was over in like 4 minutes. But the Mississippi State game last year, Mizzou and Mississippi State last year, was probably the low point of where things have been or were last year at least, and I guess have been for a couple years is what I was going to say, and I think that's fair to say. That game, I'm trying to get to the stats right now. My internet is moving slightly slowly, but here we go. That game was, it was awful. That was one of those games that I don't know if you guys watched it, but I don't even think I watched the whole thing. That's how bad it was. And that one was in Starkville. It was 72-45 was the final in that game. And it was just, Missouri shot like 4%, I think. That's about what it seemed like in that game. They just could not make anything. If I remember, they were down right off the bat like 23-4 or something. It was like that Tennessee game last week. And so I was surprised when I looked up the numbers that Mississippi State has won 7 out of 8 games against Missouri. Missouri won the first 2 as members of the SEC. Back in, I guess that would have been 2012, 13. They won those 2, and then Mississippi State has won 7 of the last 8. Oddly, the only Missouri win came at Mizzou Arena. It was Kim Anderson's, I believe, last season. Missouri had blown like a 10-point lead. It might have been Konzo's first year. Missouri had blown this huge lead because that was kind of what they did at that point in time. And then Kevin Puryear ended up hitting a three-pointer in overtime that beat Mississippi State. I think it was 84-81. It was a corner three. They got a good bounce, and Missouri won that game on the Puryear three. But that's it. Other than that, Missouri hadn't beaten Mississippi State in like 6 years. And they're going down to Starkville, trail the overall series 9-4. Should be a pretty interesting matchup because I'm going to be honest, guys. Mississippi State is not all that good. We'll get to that in a minute. Jake B says, top tonight's day with a W after Mookie to Mizzou. Obviously, Mookie Cooper committed to Missouri today, the former four-star out of high school, out of Trinity, from Ohio State. Spent 1 year at Ohio State and transferred today to Missouri. And certainly, hey, we want to talk about what you guys want to talk about. If we've got questions and comments about that, we'll do that. I figured we probably would do a little bit of it tonight, but this is mostly a basketball show. We're going to focus on the game that's coming up in 55 minutes. We're going to talk to Mitchell Forty, bring him into the show at 7:30. And I want to warn you guys ahead of time, I'm going to need your help tonight because normally on this show we do 2 things. We talk to somebody that covers the opposing team, and we play you some interviews from Mizzou. Well, Mizzou did not do media day yesterday. We have not talked to anybody at Mizzou since the end of the Arkansas game. So we don't have a whole lot of we don't have actually any interviews to play you. We do have Konzo from after the game Saturday, which, hey, if my voice gets tired, if the comments slow down, we might play Konzo's post-game press conference from Saturday, but that's the last time we talked to him. Secondly, we don't have anybody that covers the opposing team because nobody that covers the opposing team got back to me, so we don't have that tonight for the scouting report from that side. So you're going to have to rely on Mitchell and I's knowledge and wisdom, and there could be worse things to have to rely on. But again, we'll roll through some of your comments, and we want to focus it on what you guys want to talk about. Cam We'll be curious to see if Torrance Watson has officially passed Parker Brown in the rotation. Would be nice to get him some confidence in making shots. And, yeah, I thought after the game on Saturday, I thought that was an indication that Torrance Watson was kind of the ninth guy on this team, at least getting a look, right? Because I didn't think Parker Brown played well at all in the Tennessee game. Not that anybody else did either. But Parker, especially on defense, really struggled in that game. So I thought that was initially maybe an indication that, hey, this is the chance to get Torrance Watson more time, which Konzo has said he's wanted to do. But a couple of people also brought up a good point and said that Arkansas was playing a smaller lineup with Justin Smith out. And so, Watson got the minutes because it was more to match what Arkansas was doing than it was, hey, he had passed Parker Brown. So if they play a bigger team, maybe Brown is the ninth guy. If they play more of a smaller, quicker, athletic team like Arkansas had on Saturday, maybe it's Torrance Watson. So we'll keep an eye on that going forward. I'm not sure what to think, but we know the top 8 in the rotation. I mean, the same 5 start every single game, and then the 3 guys off the bench, usually in this order, are Mitchell Smith, Javon Pickett, and Drew Buggs. That's your top 8, and that's not changing. Those guys all play 15 minutes or more per game, and Konzo has settled into that pretty early on in the season. Then that 9th guy is Parker Brown or Torrance Watson, and that's really been a role of like 8 to 9 minutes a game. I think Brown was averaging 8.5. I think Watson played 8 or 9 against Arkansas, went 0 for 2 from the floor, and in those minutes, if Torrance Watson is going to be part of that rotation, those shots are going to have to go in. I mean, that's why he's on the floor. He's on the floor to hit open threes on a team full of people that really aren't hitting very many open threes. So if those shots don't go in, then you probably need those minutes to go somewhere else. Want to mention, and we're rolling some stuff across the bottom of the screen about some of these games, but there are 2 other games in the SEC tonight, both that are underway already, both pretty interesting. Florida and Alabama are playing. They're the only 2-0 teams in the league. So after tonight, there's only going to be one team that's played 3 games and hasn't lost a game in the SEC because Alabama beat Tennessee on Saturday, which I don't think any of us saw coming. So either Alabama or Florida is going to lead the league at 3-0. Next one's going to be 2-1. That other score you see rolling across right now, Vanderbilt up 7 at Rupp Arena. Scottie Pippen Jr. actually is halfway to a triple-double at halftime. He's got 10.6 rebounds and 5 assists. But that's not a real talented Vanderbilt team. Kentucky got its second win of the season by beating this Mississippi State team in double OT on Saturday. And you thought, hey, maybe they found some things. They had a freshman that hit 7 threes. You thought, okay, look, they've had a tough schedule. Maybe they're starting to figure it out. You lose to Vanderbilt at home. This is a Vanderbilt team that honestly maybe won't be favored in a single game this year in SEC play. They were picked 14th. You lose that game, and things are going to get pretty weird in a hurry for John Calipari and the Kentucky Wildcats. Keep rolling on through. Justin Ferguson, who was in Starkville for the football loss, is doing you all a favor and staying home tonight, not going to the basketball game. So, Justin, I think everybody appreciates that. And, I don't know if you do Jaeger bombs for basketball too. Hopefully you don't do them every time they score, because even if they only score 45 like they did last time they played Mississippi State, I think that'd be a rough evening for you. All right, Justin Wirtz brings up a point that I talked about. If teams start to go under every screen and force Mizzou to make shots, do they need to become an elite defense because they are what they are from deep? Yeah, it would certainly help. I think it is time we admit this just is kind of what this team is. They don't shoot the ball well from 21 feet and beyond. Now, I don't know that they're going to end the season at 26%, which is where they're at right now, and 3% worse than last year, which is the worst shooting team in Missouri history. I would think they'll get to at least 30% this season, but, this isn't a small sample size. 29.7% last year, 26-something so far this year, and the issue really is, who shoots him? Because Mark Smith is still shooting 40-some-odd%. He's your best shooter, but he really seems to struggle to get a shot off against athletic teams like Missouri's going to play the rest of the way. and he disappears way too often in games against high-level competition. So if he's not shooting them, Torrance Watson came off the bench 0 for 2. Drew Smith is like a 29, 30% three-point shooter. He isn't really shooting very well and didn't shoot well last year. I know he shot it well at Evansville, but there's a little Mark Smith in that. And that, yeah, the teams you play at Evansville aren't the teams you're going to play here. So maybe the jump in competition, especially with that low shot Drew has, maybe doesn't quite work at this level from three-point range. Now, he did go 2 for 2 on Saturday. There's a much bigger issue with Drew Smith, which is staying on the floor and only taking 4 shots in the game. But he did hit his only 2 threes. Javon Pickett's not a three-point shooter. Kobe Brown's definitely not a three-point shooter. Mitchell Smith isn't a three-point shooter. And then that leaves Xavier Pinson, who people think, hey, Pinson's the guy, he can knock these down. I think going into Saturday, and I don't know what he was Saturday, but I know he didn't make very many, if any. He didn't make more than one, if that. He was 8 for 33 before that game. I mean, that's below 25%. Like, that's below average on a very bad shooting team. So the point is, I don't know where you turn and say, well, hey, maybe this guy can get hot. So I said, hey, I'd absolutely go under every screen. I would pack the lane. I would consider zone against this Missouri team. Now, somebody brought up on our message board, and it was a good point, that Missouri has the ability still to do well against a zone because Mitchell Smith can get to the high post and Pinson is good at penetrating. If you're going to play zone, it has to be good, and you have to keep Pinson out of the lane. If you can't do that, then there's no point in playing zone. But I would consider it against this team, and I'd absolutely force them to shoot over me. Because, look, they haven't done it so far. Davin asked if Ben Howland's a good coach. I mean, he is. He's not a miracle worker. But the guy went to 3 straight Final Fours at Pitt, I think. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if they were all at Pitt. They might have been 1 at Pitt and 2 at UCLA. But he did a good job at Pitt. And then, obviously, a much better job at UCLA where, hey, you have more talent than you're going to have at Pitt or at Mississippi State. I think he's a good coach. I don't think he's an elite coach. I don't think he's anybody that Missouri fans should watch this game tonight and say, oh, man, I can't believe we didn't hire that guy. I mean, it's fine, And hiring him when you hired Konzo Martin, it would have been fine. But I don't think any Missouri fans should be losing sleep over it. All right, Todd Julian at work. Appreciate you tuning us in. I hope you don't have like a super important job, like you don't have your finger on any button and you're listening to our show. But we do appreciate you listening, and hopefully you got AirPods or something so the boss won't get in trouble. And Davin, I want to be clear. I didn't reach out to our rivals person at Mississippi State this time because that's a site where they're kind of growing. They do a little bit more football. So I had to reach out to somebody else that covers Mississippi State and didn't hear back. So I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, just explaining to you guys why we don't have the opposing viewpoint on this particular show tonight. Todd Julian wanting Torrance Watson to hit threes like he did when he was a freshman. Torrance, he started out not well at all as a freshman and as a sophomore, actually, but he hit his last 10 games as a freshman, he looked really good. Now, I've always said there's a caveat to that for me, and that was those came in games that, I mean, they didn't mean anything. Now, look, they still went in, and they still count, but Missouri was done by the time he started playing well and hitting a bunch of threes and scoring 20 points. Now, doesn't mean he can't do it in bigger games, but just I always thought at the end of that year, okay, now I want to see him start that way as a sophomore and prove to me that he can do it in a little more high leverage situations. Obviously, that didn't happen his sophomore year. Now he still has time. He's going to get an opportunity this year. He's going to get plenty of opportunities next year, I think. But so far we haven't seen it. Adam Clippard's asking about South Carolina and whether they can make up the games that they've missed. Theoretically, they can as of right now because there is a week built into the middle of the season for cancellations. And there might be 2 weeks, but I think there's just one, but there might be 2. Every team has some spots. So South Carolina could theoretically get those 2 extra games in. I think, honestly, they could, even if it meant 1 week you played Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, or 2 weeks you played Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. It's not ideal, but the SEC has proven in football, hey, they'll do what they can to get the games in. So I think they still could, but the issue is you can't really have any more games canceled and make those up. Look, I think it's a little optimistic to believe that we are going to get to the end of this year and every team in the SEC is going to have played 18 games. We said at the beginning of the football season, we're probably not going to get to the end of the year and have every football team play 10. We didn't. We came pretty close. I think the SEC did a heck of a job on it, but didn't quite make it. So I don't think everybody's going to have 18. I think there's going to be some cancellations and some movement. And the problem, again, in basketball is when you have to go on pause, you're not just missing one game. You're probably missing 2 or 3, depending on when it happens, and then you have to shift those to later in the season. So it'll be interesting to see what goes on. Justin says he may start doing Jaeger bombs for every 3-pointer. Well, Justin, I'll be honest, man, that might be safe for this team. You're only doing 2 or 3 in a game at that point right now. So Jacob Estes back with us, and there you go. Once the comment on Mookie Cooper. Yeah, I mean, look, that's a big get for Missouri. He was a kid that a year ago, every Missouri fan absolutely wanted. And just because he went to Ohio State and didn't do much as a true freshman, look, I mean, that's a pretty good team. They've got some guys, right? So I wouldn't sound any alarm bells yet. He's a guy that Josh Helmholt he's our Midwest analyst, said, he's one of the most explosive athletes he's ever seen play. We reached out to Kevin Noon, who covers Ohio State for the Rivals Network, and asked about him. And Noon said he would have been the top receiver in Ohio State's class a lot of seasons, but not in the year he came in a crowded receiver room with uncertainty about how to best use his talents led to an early exit. He has a ton of natural ability, but also hasn't played football in 2 years and just couldn't really find a position within the Ohio State attack, which I actually think is one of the advantages for Missouri getting Mookie Cooper, because you can play him in the slot, but you can also put him at running back. You can use him on those jet sweeps. You could put him at tailback, use him on a speed option now and then. And I think day one, he's your return man, or he at least gets a shot at it. Because I don't know if you guys noticed that Missouri had trouble returning particularly punts this year. Didn't always go well, so I think he's definitely going to get a look returning punts and kickoffs next year. So kind of a Swiss Army knife type of guy. I don't know if he has a position, but I think this offense kind of likes guys like that. I mean, look what Drinkwitz did with Tyler Beatty. Had a good year. Jalen Knox was used in a number of different ways, so I think he's that type of a player. And he won't officially count in our class rankings because transfers don't. If he did, you can make an argument that's the 7th 4-star in this recruiting class because they signed the 6 in December and now Mookie Cooper as well. So those are the type of guys you've got to get from in the state, and you've got to start piling up. I mean, ultimately, that's what led to Barry Odom getting fired here, is he didn't land enough of those guys in state. And when you have a 4-star or a 5-star guy in the state, that's kind of when you need to capitalize on them, because I understand Drinkwitz went to Indianapolis and got 2 of them this year, but that's not super normal for Missouri right now. Maybe it will become normal with this coach. But it's not something they've done a lot in the past, is go out of state and get 4-stars. So when you have those guys in the state, I think it's even more important that you get them. Jared's wanting to know, why do you think the shooting struggles so much? Is it coaching or just lack of ability to pull in any spot-up shooters? It's just, I think, the skill set of the guys. And look, like, they can make jump shots, but obviously not real consistently. But it's not coaching. I mean, they get open shots. Not all of them. Sometimes they take bad shots. Mark Smith took a terrible one at the end of the Bradley game, and Pinson's taken a couple. He took one in the Tennessee game that really made you scratch your head. But a lot of these are, hey, kick to an open shooter in the corner on the wing, and they just missed the shot. I mean, those are shots that, these guys need to make. That's why guys like Watson and Mark Smith largely are on the roster, is to make those shots. So that's something that's got to happen. And I think it's just I don't know. Bad shooting also maybe can be a little bit contagious, and maybe that's happened. Didn't Mizzou take a look at Howland once Mike Anderson left for Arkansas? They never did, really. Howland wanted the job, but Missouri wasn't interested. I think Mike Alden, again, going back to the Quinn Snyder stuff, I mean, that scared him to death. He was never going to touch anybody that had NCAA issues after that. And there was I don't know that Ben Howland ever got in trouble. He may have, but there's been plenty of talk. There was a Sports Illustrated article about him and the Pump brothers and all that. And I think that basically submarined any chance he had to get this job. I don't think Missouri ever really looked. All right, Brian Brooks says it's going to be a Mitchell Smith night tonight. So there you go. And look, Mitchell Smith does deserve, I think, more credit than we give him. I mean, he's not a great offensive player, right? We don't see a ton of points usually. But in that Arkansas game, he had a plus-minus of plus 17. It was the best on the team. And what that means is in the 20 minutes he was on the floor, Missouri outscored Arkansas by 17 points. In the 20 minutes he was on the bench, Arkansas outscored Missouri by 4 points in that game. And, so he obviously does a lot of things for this team. I mean, to put it in perspective, Jeremiah Tillman, who had 25 points and 10 rebounds in that game, his rating was plus 4. So Mitchell Smith obviously is doing a lot of things right. And look, there's a reason that Konzo Martin keeps putting him out there in these situations. Worth updating the other scores in the league real quick. Kentucky is starting off much better in the second half. They have closed to within a point of Vanderbilt. I'm still going to hold out hope that Vanderbilt can get a win in Rupp Arena. Oh, Kentucky actually now just took the lead. And Alabama is leading Florida 49-41. So the Crimson Tide, kind of not a very good non-conference, but really has started off well here in SEC play, looking to go 3-0, including that win over Tennessee and another win over Florida would be pretty impressive. Bryce Isbell's asking why Watson doesn't do what he did, what made him successful in high school. Is he too small? And that's the interesting thing about Torrance Watson. He didn't come here known as like this dead-eyed spot-up three-point shooter. He was a scorer. He drove a lot. He did a lot of those things. He got to the basket, he got in the lane, and we haven't seen a lot of that. There was a stretch late in his freshman year where he did some of it, and I don't know if his handle's not good enough to do it at this level, if he doesn't have the confidence, or if maybe the staff just asked him to do other things. I'm not sure. It is something definitely that I think is worth asking about and looking into down the road, is just, hey, this is a guy who he wasn't really known as just a spot-up shooter, but basically from day one when he got here, he's become kind of just a spot-up shooter. And why is that? Honestly, I think that's Mark Smith's problem too. Now, the difference is I think Torrance Watson is more capable of doing some of those things than Mark Smith is. Davin says if you watch the team shooting warm-ups, it's not great unguarded. They need to play good defense and push the pace and try to get transition buckets even more than they are now. And, yeah, look, this is a team that needs easy baskets. I mean, they beat Illinois. They had 20 points in transition. The Arkansas game, even if there weren't a ton of easy baskets, and there were some easy baskets off that pick and roll, but they also went to the free throw line 39 times. So those are easy points. So that's how they have to find a way to score points, because they're just not going to sit out there and hit 14 or 15 threes. Mizzou beat Liberty. Mississippi State lost to Liberty. Mizzou beats Mississippi State. Zachary, we all know the transitive property absolutely applies in college sports. But, again, this is not all that good of a Mississippi State team, guys. I mean, here's their schedule so far. They lost by 11 to Clemson. I don't think Clemson's all that good. By the way, they scored 42 points in that game. Lost by 11 to Liberty. Beat Texas State, North Texas, and Jacksonville State. Then lost to Dayton. And Dayton's a solid team, but it's not last year's Dayton team. Beat Central Arkansas. Beat Mississippi Valley State. Beat Georgia by 10, which is probably their best win of the year. And then lost to Kentucky 78-73. And again, Kentucky is currently trailing by 3 points at Vanderbilt and 2-6 on the season. So this is not a great Kentucky team that went and won in Starkville. Mark Robinson says Sean Dura Gordon is moving to campus in a week and a half. too bad for next season. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I don't know enough about his game to say whether he's a guy that's going to come in and solve those shooting woes or not at this point. He might. But let's see him on campus and let him get comfortable before we rely on it too much. T-Rise says kind of what we were talking about earlier. We have a shooter in Mark Smith, but he disappears on offense for large stretches. Yeah, I think he doesn't get his own shot. And I think maybe, I don't know if it's he can't get open or he can't get the shot off quickly enough against high-level competition. But, obviously there's an issue. Bob Douglas, Mrs. Mitchell, I got good news, man. I'm calling him in like 3 minutes. He's going to be on the show at 7:30 to talk about this game a little bit. Justin, does Tilly go back-to-back tonight with good performances? Would love 12 and 10 just to see him put a couple games together. Hey, if you can get 12 and 10 out of Jeremiah Tillman every night, like, you're going to be fat and happy with that. And I said, the reason, and this is not great insight and exclusive to me, but the reason Tillman's so frustrating is he can put up 25 and 10, so it's there. He's capable of it. But the next game, he might come back and have 4 and 4. We have no idea what to expect out of Jeremiah tonight. Conzo Martin has no idea what to expect out of Jeremiah tonight. I'm not sure Jeremiah has any idea what to expect out of Jeremiah tonight. But I think you saw on Saturday, I mean, he and Pinson are the guys for this team. When they play well, this team can do a lot of good things. When they don't, I think it's a lot harder. Sorry about that. It's getting late, I guess. I think if Drew Smith plays a bad game, Missouri can survive it more easily. If Mark Smith has a bad game, they can survive it more easily. But if Pinson and Tillman have bad games, I think that's difficult for this team to overcome. Now, look, you're not going to go 25 and 10 every night, but look at those numbers over to my right. He's averaging 10.4 and 7.8 a game. I think Conzo would sign up for about that every night. There are going to be nights you'd like a little more scoring out of him than 10 and a half points, but if he knows he can get 10 and a half and almost 8 rebounds a game out of Tillman all season long, I think he's probably taken that and rely on Pinson and Mark Smith and Drew Smith to score a little bit more. That point average, I think, was 8.3 going into the Arkansas game, 8.3 or 8.4. So just one game, we're still early enough in the season that one game raised his points per game average by 2 full points. Once again, tip-off at 8 o'clock. That's about half hour from now. It's on the SEC network. So I hope by now you guys all know where to find that on your televisions. It's not the alternate. It's on the actual SEC network. Now, it probably won't be on the SEC network right at the start because for some reason TV networks have still not figured out that you need to allow more than 2 hours for a window for a college basketball game. So we'll probably watch about the last 4 minutes of some game that is on before that happens, before Missouri and Mississippi State get going. But we now are proud to welcome in, much to the happiness of Bob Douglas, Mitchell Forty to the show. Mitch, what's going on, man?
Not too much. How are y'all doing?
Hanging in. A lot of people, a lot of comments tonight, which is good because I have no sound from Missouri and no scouting report from Mississippi State. So I needed a little bit of help, which was good. So we actually started the show talking about do you remember the Mississippi State game last year?
Well, there were two. And they were both pretty terrible, but the one at Mississippi State was especially terrible.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. 45 points.
Yeah.
And I saw actually Mississippi State scored 43 in a game earlier this year. So
did they? Yeah. No, yeah. I mean, I fully anticipate that this will be an ugly game. It's a tough matchup for Missouri. Mississippi State's long. They like to slow the game down, and they defend the paint well. They defend 2-point shots well, which is, as we know, pretty much the only way Missouri can score.
So the game plan is clearly put up a whole bunch of threes.
I think not, unless you know, I don't know, someone catches fire or something. Yeah, even though that is Mississippi State's sort of defensive weakness is the three. I don't I have no faith that Missouri can shoot them even if they're open.
So Jake Shell says Mitchell hustles and brings energy every game. I don't think he's actually talking about you. I did save that comment for when you were on.
Is.
I think he was discussing Mitchell Smith with that, but I could be wrong.
Are you kidding me? My message board presence brings the energy.
A lot of hustle, energy,
all
every
my hot
single
takes.
Yeah. So we were right before I called you. We were kind of talking about Tillman and 25-10, and who knows tonight, man? 25-10, 3-2. Not a clue.
Yeah. It's you know, it's one of the things that's always been a little frustrating about him. Obviously, you like that he can occasionally give you a game like he did in the last game, but you'd like if he could, you know, follow it up. I mean, he is a little bit of a streaky player, so maybe, you know, he's playing with some confidence right now. Maybe that helps. But this is also a tough matchup for him. Mississippi State's got two, you know, tall, long dudes. I think one's like 6'10", 171 or something like that. I don't know. I might be way off on my heights, but they have two tall guys.
Yeah.
And Abdul Adu's been around for a while, and he's guarded Tillman before, so he'll know what to do.
Yeah. And Carly McClellan, who I think this might be your first time joining us, or at least commenting, Carly. So thanks for that. It says he's a really good rebounder, and Tillman, honestly, before this year hasn't really been a good rebounder, but to me, that's been a big difference in his game this year. He's averaging almost 8, and there are times where you look at him and go, oh, yeah, that guy is 6'11", 260, and that is what he should do on the glass.
Yeah, for sure. He's been a much better rebounder, and he's also, you know, he hasn't picked up a lot of fouls on rebounds. At least that's not that I can remember. So, yeah, that's been an improvement for sure. He still occasionally he'll get one. I remember one distinctly last game where he'll jump for it and not, instead of boxing out and mistime his jump and miss it, but his rebounding numbers are a lot better than they were last year and really all of his first 3 years.
My favorite rebound in the last game was actually the one that Kobe Brown stole from Drew Buggs and then dropped out of it.
Yeah, that was tough.
Somebody should have like memed the look on Drew Buggs' face because he looked incredibly unhappy with that play.
Yeah, I can't blame him.
So, elsewhere in the SEC, dude, Kentucky's losing at home to Vanderbilt.
Are they really?
I mean, it's 57-55, but it, you know,
still.
So I guess it's kind of time that, and this Kentucky team, I mean, Kentucky beat Mississippi State on Saturday, so I'm not too sure Mississippi State's any good. Now, that doesn't mean they can't win tonight, but I don't. Mississippi State has not done anything impressive.
No, I mean, Mississippi State, I don't think is like a very good, like an excellent team. I don't think they're, you know, especially talented team. I don't think they're probably a tournament team. I still maintain though it is a hard matchup for Missouri because their strength aligns with, you know, Missouri's strength, and Missouri's, you know, really not capable of knocking down open threes. So, you know, if you can defend the paint and defend around the basket, Missouri's going to have a hard time scoring it. And Mississippi State just, you know, they kind of embraced a similar style to what Missouri's done in the past and, you know, making it ugly and slowing the game down, which is actually not kind of what Missouri has wanted to do a lot of this season. So we'll see. I mean, like, Missouri should be the better team, but I do think this will be a close game. I think I picked Mizzou by like 2 or 3.
And then meanwhile, as we all expected, Alabama, which looked dreadful in the non-conference, is blowing out Florida and is about to be 3-0. So
yeah, I've been semi-monitoring that game while I cooked Nate dinner. They look pretty good. I mean, like at this point, it's fair to say like they're starting off SEC play pretty well. They look kind of legit all of a sudden. Beat Tennessee by what was it, like 17 or something like that at Tennessee, and now beating Florida, who was the only other 2-0 team in SEC play coming into today.
Okay, you said you cooked and ate dinner. I thought you said you cooked Nate dinner, and I didn't know who Nate was, but you know,
cooked and ate.
I thought that it was very nice of you to do, but Steve says we need to lower the turnovers and keep attacking the rim. Like that kind of low key got overlooked on Saturday. I mean, because they won and actually did so fairly easily, but they turned the ball over 21 times again. It's kind of a trend with his teams over the last 3 years. They talk about it a lot and fixing it, but it's never really gotten fixed.
Yeah, it wasn't ignored or glossed over by Konzo. He was not thrilled about it. He said he was going to name one of his grandchildren Turnover, which I support. I hope he follows through on that.
Well, before you go on, like, does he get to name the grandchildren? Because I don't think he really has that
that's
right.
a good point. That's a good point. I don't know if he has that kind of power.
Yeah.
I don't know. Don't know about his relationship with his children like that. So, but I still think it should happen. But anyway, yes, it has been talked about a lot, and it's really been an issue since Konzo arrived. And there were a few games this season actually where they've been really good at not turning the ball over, single-digit turnovers. But the last 2 games that has not been the case. It's tough because I still think, I think Missouri needs to try to get out and run whenever you can.
Yeah.
And that means probably a few more turnovers. And like against Tennessee, it was just, it was just an all-around bad performance. Like the offense was bad. Tennessee's defense was really good. Against Arkansas, there were a bunch of turnovers kind of early where there was just mishandles and stuff, but there were some where it's like happening in transition where that was clearly the right move in that game was to get out and run with Arkansas, and like you live with that. Like there were more possessions in that game. Like the numbers not quite as alarming, but in this game where you're going to have fewer possessions again, like I've mentioned, Mississippi State slows the game down. It's probably not going to be as high scoring. You cannot afford to turn the ball over 20 plus times and win this game, I don't think.
Yeah, and and some of them you can live with. Like there was one on a break, like Pinson got a little fancy and threw a ball into like the third row, but you can live with that. But the ones where like Mark Smith just drops the ball with nobody around him, I thought it was, like Drew Smith catches the ball at the 3-point line and travels and nobody's close to him. Like those have to go away.
Right,
you can save 4 or 5 that way.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, there's definitely been some first there.
Yeah. So Zachary points out that Mizzou shot 11 for 54 from 3-point range last year against Mississippi State. So 2 takeaways from that. It's not as far below the season average as you would hope it would be because it's over 20%. But it also means they average 27 threes a game. There should be 0 games the rest of this year where Missouri attempts 27 3-point shots. Right?
Yeah, I'd like to think Zachary got that stat from my my game preview. I'm sure he did. I'm sure everyone's read it by now. Yeah. But I mean, like Mississippi State, that's why these games went so poorly for Missouri last year. Why they hardly scored. They scored 45 in one game, like you mentioned. Mississippi State basically clogged up the lane and dared them to shoot, and that was still in the phase where Missouri thought it could do that and did it a lot. And it was actually, I think it was right after that second Mississippi State game that like they kind of had the revelation of like, oh, we can drive and score points that way.
Right.
So yeah, like you can there's under no circumstances. Aside from like one guy going 11 for 11, should Missouri shoot 27 3-pointers? Even then, probably not.
I would absolutely be willing to bet that we will not see a player on this team go 11 for 11 from 3-point range.
That seems like a safe bet.
Also, like if the other team is going to dare you to shoot, I still hope Missouri doesn't. They should clearly just charge into the lane nearly out of control because they will probably get to the free throw line that way because that's what teams do.
That's true. That's true. I will say Mississippi State's been pretty good at guarding without fouling, but it also just kind of depends on who it's like it really at this point it's just luck of the draw if you're good at guarding without fouling because everyone plays the same way, and some nights the officials let it go, and some nights they decide that they want to blow the whistle every 12 seconds.
Right. And Adam Clippard says, looking back, it's insane to think how hot Mizzou was from deep in the first half against Oregon. And like, look, there's going to be another night like that where even this team runs into just like a 9 of 12 stretch because I mean it's a 22-foot jump shot. It's not like these guys are incapable of making it. And there's going to be a night or two where they just all go in and Missouri scores 95 points like the Florida game last year. I mean, that was like I think they made more threes in that game maybe than they made in the rest of the SEC season combined.
Yeah, and you're right. There's going to be stretches like that. And I do think not all, because we've seen over a big sample size that this team just can't shoot from 3, but some of the outside shooting struggles comes down to confidence. I mean, these things tend to come in bunches. You see a few go in, it all of a sudden feels like an easier shot. Your teammates start to make them, you loosen up. That helps. But yeah, I'm sure that'll happen a game or two. Again, I just think that, you can't bet on it, in the long haul at this point because of the sample size we've seen of poor jump shooting.
Okay, so Carly McClellan is back, and I post this because this is a very important development for our show. She says she's personally met Tilly and Watson and Lawrence Bowers at Lawrence Bowers basketball camp, and they have amazing skills to give me as a 13-year-old. Mitch, we are appealing to all demographics here. I mean,
yeah, that's big.
That's why we got on YouTube to hit up the younger audience. So
That's true. They're the trendsetters.
Yeah.
So Carly, tell your friends. Power
Yeah,
Mizzou.
yeah.
Doing
Carly,
big
have all.
things.
I'm sure that the middle school girls all want to watch the show, but we appreciate you watching it. That's awesome, and that's cool that you've gotten to go to basketball camp and meet those guys, and I think that they do a lot of things like that I think probably a lot of people know. Steve P points out that maybe Konzo was going to have turnover be the nickname. I'm against that. The actual legal name is going to be turnover.
Right. They can call him whatever they want, but
They can call him Chase.
Martin.
Or call him Konzo Jr. But the birth certificate's going to say Turnover
Chase's
Martin.
Actual son's name.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So all right. Yeah. Anyway.
Okay, so this is an interesting thing. I know Pinson talked about it, and I had logged off by the time Pinson went last week. But like the ball was flat at the beginning of the Arkansas game.
Yeah, apparently. I saw a tweet during the game. Missouri's sports information director responded to a tweet saying, like, put some air in the ball. And he said that actually was a concern. Players were complaining about it, and they swapped it out after the first media timeout. So while it was an issue for a little bit and apparently a real issue, I think that only accounts for about 3 of Missouri's 21 turnovers.
Well, but 18 would have looked better than 21, though. Adam Clifford points out and I like referring to Vanover this way as that lengthy Arkansas guy who went like over 12 Saturday would fit right in here. Somebody brought up on our postgame show on Saturday, he was actually Missouri's MVP in that game. Like Tillman played really well and Pinson played really well, but like he just kept shooting despite the fact that at no point was it going to go in.
Yeah, he had a rough go of it. I will say, like, give Tillman some credit. He played good defense on him. I mean, he was open for a few threes, but for the most part, like, you could tell who was the stronger player down low. But yeah, I mean, poor Vanover. He just looked like he was gonna have nightmares at the end of that game.
I mean, there were a couple times where he had like 2 layups on the same possession, and that was not good defense. He just didn't make any of them. I'm sure he's a better player than that, though. So
yeah.
Let's see. Steve's asking if there's any news of the Illinois defensive coordinator. There's not. We anticipate it will happen like 45 seconds before tip-off of the basketball game.
Or like right at the end of a close game would be even better.
Right, exactly. Who will be the Mizzou defensive coordinator next year? I mean, for now we're going with Ryan Walters, but if he leaves, we are prepared. That's actually what I spent the morning doing is looking at guys that it might be. I'm also pretty confident in telling you it will not be Derek Mason or Will Muschamp. I don't think either of those two things are going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. We can if we can talk defensive coordinators for a minute. Like I think the natural tendency is to go with names we know, right? Because not many people know who the up and coming coordinators are. But personally, I would not hire Will Muschamp. No chance. I think that you run the risk a lot of times with a guy who's been a head coach a couple times and probably never will again. That now he's just gonna kind of collect checks, and you don't have the same motivation to like get back to the head coaching level with his performance. Not saying that will necessarily be the case for Muschamp, but his defense has also kind of not been that spectacular in South Carolina. So
yeah, he had good defenses at Texas and Florida. I mean, you can stockpile a lot of 4 and 5 stars at those places.
Right, but Missouri's a lot more similar to South Carolina.
Exactly. Alex Schiffer checking in. What's up, Schiff? Glad to have you here. Ed wants to know, should Mizzou be favored the rest of the season except for the Tennessee game? Like, I don't think they're going to be favored at Alabama, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know exactly where they play each team, but regardless of where they play Florida, but they might not be favored. But if it's at Florida, definitely not.
Yeah, that's at Florida. That's the last game of the year.
Rupp, to be honest. Yeah, still probably not favored at Rupp, if we're being honest. Like, I mean, look, like, this is, it's weird because, basketball, I don't know if it's, from getting used to football or what, but in basketball, like, the SEC teams are so closely bunched together. Like, even a, team who finishes the conference play 7-11 or something like that, might be favored over Missouri on their home floor. Like, there's a lot of close games and a lot of these teams can beat each other on any given night.
Yeah, and I mean, like, for example, Missouri tonight is a 1.5 point favorite. Right. At a Mississippi State team whose best win is Georgia?
Yeah.
So no, I would imagine Missouri will be underdogs in a handful of games, like 5 or 6 games the rest of the way, probably. Does that sound about right?
Yeah. Without knowing, every game they play or what location every game is at. Yeah, that sounds right to me.
All right, I've been holding off on this, but he's very insistent. Ragnar wants you to break down the Georgia Senate races, Mitch. So you up for that?
Yeah, I'll have to probably pass on that one.
I can't even break down the Georgia basketball team right now, much less the Georgia Senate races. So yeah.
I know the Georgia basketball team had a bit of a rude awakening in SEC play. They were undefeated after playing no one and have since lost twice.
Yeah, the Tom Crean thing, I'll be interested to see. I mean, I know it'll be disappointing to your family. I know you guys are very close and all that, but I mean,
if you ask him, we are.
He had the number 1 pick in the draft last year, and they were dreadful, and they beat a whole bunch of nobodies, but don't really look particularly good this year. So I'll be interested to see. I'm not sure he'll get it going there at all.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I mean, it kind of boils down, I think, to, how long his leash is kind of boils down to how much they care to pay him to go away at a place where basketball, doesn't really matter all that much. But we'll see. We'll see. They could still end up being decent this year, but again, kind of a rough opening to the SEC.
Yeah, all right. So I actually saw this. Jerry Palm had Mizzou in his 3 seed in bracketology on Monday, playing 14-seeded Norfolk State. God help us. Like, if that game happens, if that matchup happens in the first round, then the NCAA never again gets to say we don't look at storylines.
That's true. That's true. But here's the thing, like bracketologists do probably and should look at storylines because that's the only way to make these brackets matter at this time of year. I mean, like they are so meaningless. The bracketology thing, like I respect it, whatever, but it's so dumb. Like, how else are you going to get people to click on it other than like being like, oh, look, maybe Missouri and Kansas will play in the second round, Louisville and Kentucky in the same region, like Duke, North Carolina, Elite Eight game,
right?
Like
Well, and because, like, at least in football, like, these playoff rankings are stupid 5 weeks out, but at least you could look at it and go, all right, well, if Alabama wins out, they're going to be in. And, like, when you look at Alabama's schedule, they're probably going to win out. But, I mean, you can't look at Missouri's schedule and go, okay, well, if we break this down, yeah, they'll be a 3 seed. Nobody knows.
Right. The football rankings are at least coming from the people who are going to seed the playoff. The bracketology is a total guess.
Well, and speaking of total guesses and things like that, it's hilarious. I saw a tweet today that I think it was the Carolina Panthers announced the 6 people they had interviewed for their general manager position. Meanwhile, when you cover college sports, you just sit here around and Illinois is trying to keep it a secret who they might hire as defensive coordinator. Like it's going to change lives or something. It's very interesting to me.
Yeah, welcome to college sports. Literally everything is a secret.
Yeah. Schiff wants to know how your puzzle is coming along, Mitch. So I hope you're doing well. Good luck on that.
Yeah.
If this game,
it's cold outside. There's not a lot of things to do. I've been working a puzzle.
If this game is as exciting as some of the Mississippi State Missouri games have been, you might finish it tonight. Actually, Tucker Daniel says if Mizzou had 1 or 2 more shooters, I feel like they'd be a top 10 team. Like if they win 2 games this week, they're going to be a top 10 team even without that. Is the interesting?
Right.
I mean, we keep pointing to this flaw, and like I get why we are, but I mean. They're 7-1 against a good schedule.
Yeah, no, I mean, based on what they've done so far this season, they are probably already a top 10 team. I mean, they're 10, actually, I think now 11th in the net, but still, you get the idea. I do sort of get Tucker's point. Like, you watch Missouri right now, and I think, at least for me personally, like, I don't know if I see them being one of the 10 best teams at the end of the season. They've done enough right now to be in that ranking, absolutely, but they are, they do have these flaws that you worry about. And yes, the shooting is the probably biggest one, and obviously having 1 to 2 more shooters would help. But at the same time, your point is fair. Like, let's not forget that this is a really accomplished team, and they've gotten this far with the pieces that they have. So we'll see. See if they can keep it going.
Yeah, Zachary wants a Jabari Brown type shooter. I think a lot of teams in the country would like a Jabari Brown type shooter.
Yes, yeah, I think he could play just about anywhere.
I think he would get minutes on this team. Yeah. Stewart says the basketball transfer market looks like it could be robust this spring. I mean, my favorite thing right now is just to follow the Rivals transfer portal handle. Like every day, there's like 100 football players going in. Basketball, the same thing's going to happen at the end of the year.
Yeah, it's crazy. I will say like it's been harder in basketball to recruit those guys because if anyone is even close to being a pro prospect who's not happy where they are, they're probably just going pro because
Right.
there's a lot more options in basketball and you don't have to wait until your third year. But B, it's been around long enough that this kind of transfer market that a lot of schools have set aside spots for it and kind of mastered the art of recruiting transfers. So the competition is probably a little bit tougher. And we saw that with Missouri last year. I mean, they kind of struck out in the transfer market. No offense to Drew Buggs. Like, I guess, he's playing, but I don't think
Right.
that's what everyone had in mind when they were originally going out into the transfer portal. So, yeah, it's going to be crazy in both sports. I mean, we're seeing it in football, like you said, but I think basketball will certainly need to find some guys there this offseason.
So you said you picked Missouri to win this game. Is that right?
I did. I think I picked them 65-62, if my memory is correct.
Okay. So this week, actually, I think last week everybody kind of pointed to as this huge week with like the two toughest SEC games. But this week almost tells me more about this team. At Mississippi State, home against LSU. They are losable games. They are games that teams who have designs on winning or finishing second in the SEC do not lose. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is. It is. And certainly if you want to be that, you don't go 0-2. You don't lose both. Like, I could see a world in which they lose one and, they're still okay. I mean,
Right.
they probably, LSU's a top 6 team in this league at a minimum. I mean,
But at home, and I know
talent.
home's not
But
what
it's at
home
home, like you
always.
said. And yeah, I think, Missouri should be favored in both of these games. And yes, if they are what a lot of people hope they are, they probably win both. But they are both, probably more significant test than you might think when you just see, number 12 Missouri or number 13 Missouri against unranked, opponents.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they have to go 2-0, but if they have honest designs on first or second in this league, I think they have to go 2-0.
Yeah.
So
I would agree.
Otherwise, they're fighting for a top 4 spot, which is fine. I mean, nobody's sneezing at that, but yeah. So
right. And you're still, fine place to make the tournament or whatever. If
right.
Obviously there's a lot to be done, but this week isn't going to make or break that.
Right. So which one of these games is on SEC Network before Missouri? Do you know?
I think it's Vandy, Kentucky, because I've been monitoring Florida, Alabama, like I mentioned. That's on ESPN too.
Okay, well, clearly then Vandy and Kentucky are going to go to overtime. They are tied at 72 with 1:57 to go. So we may not actually see the beginning of the Missouri game, or it may be pushed back. But we're 5 minutes away from when it's theoretically supposed to start. So, Mitch, we're going to let you roll and get things set up on the message board and all that. And we'll see you back on Konzo's call at, I don't know, whenever he decides to start it. I thought road games were going to be faster, and then it took like an hour in Fayetteville, I think. So.
Yeah. Well, Sounds good. Enjoy the game, everyone.
All right. Thanks, Mitch. Once again, Mitchell Forty joining us there for a little bit of breakdown, helping me out, filling the spot. And so I appreciate that out of him. And there you go. Just kind of the stats. There's the guys to watch for Mississippi State. Iverson Molinar and DJ Stewart actually scored I think 40 some odd of Mississippi State's points against Kentucky. They're the top 2 guys. Abdul Adu, I'm sorry. He only averages 5 points a game, but he's a big dude, 6.2 rebounds, 1.7 blocks. He's given Jeremiah Tillman some trouble. Once again, kind of like we talked about at the start, Mississippi State has really dominated this series, winning 7 of the last 8 and 9 out of 13 overall. And real quick, I saw this question earlier, but couldn't get to it. But now I can get to it because I have a little bit of time. Brad Scharf wanting to know if I can share my Heisman vote now. I can because it has been announced, and I actually voted for the guy who won it. I voted Devontae Smith first, Kyle Trask second, and Mac Jones third on my ballot. And so I don't know if that's the way it finished out. I didn't see who got second and third, but I went Smith, Trask, and Jones, and I was glad to see Devontae Smith win it. Thought he deserved it. I thought he was pretty clearly the best player in the country, and it's an award that has so often just gone to the best quarterback on the best team. I was glad to see that change a little bit and feel like the best player actually got it. So T-Rise says that they are saying on SEC Network tip-off at 8:05 for Mizzou and Mississippi State. So that is good to know. Kentucky right now a 1-point lead on Vanderbilt with a minute 19 left. Florida and Alabama is pretty much over. I mean, Alabama is winning that game 79-61 right now. So it's not technically over, but it is over. And again, Kentucky and Vandy with a minute 20 left. So I'm going to hang out here with you till the top of the hour, which is about 3.5 minutes away. Zachary Ray wants to know if Ed Chang's going to play tonight. I would assume not. I mean, he hasn't played in any other games unless it gets out of hand one way or the other, but I don't think he's a guy that's going to see the floor. You could maybe see Jordan Wilmore on the floor with, the size that Mississippi State has. He might get in for a couple minutes in each half to spell Tillman, give him a breather, maybe, get through a couple minutes without a foul. But Ed Chang's just not a guy that I think really you're going to expect to see, honestly, probably at any point. I mean, because you don't have those bye games against against Mississippi Valley State. There just aren't very many of them, so you didn't get a chance to get him in those games. So what I want to ask you to do while you're here, before you log off and go watch the game, is to make sure to hit the like button on the show, hit the subscribe button on our channel, share it with other people. Share the channel and the show and what we're doing with some of your friends. Have them stop by, whether it's a post-game show, pre-game show, whatever it might be. Wednesday night, tomorrow night at 7:30, Mitch and I will do the 573 report, which is just kind of taking questions and catching up on all things Mizzou. This is a little more obviously basketball themed, but we'll talk about some football and recruiting and everything tomorrow. So join us for that. And real quick, want to get one more question in here that I see from Tucker Daniels. Who do you think could have a big offensive night for Missouri? For some reason, I feel like Mark Smith is due for a big night. That would be good. I think Kobe Brown might match up well with this team. A guy who's got a little mid-range game, can get to the basket, but is a bigger guy, has done a pretty decent job on the offensive glass. If Mark Smith could get going, that certainly would be good for Missouri. But if anybody can get going, I don't even know if it matters who. If Tillman can go get 25 more, or if Pinson can do what he did. My pick's going to be Kobe Brown. Tucker picks Mark Smith, and we'll see how it goes. So I'm going to log off here in just a minute. I'm going to go watch the game. You guys are going to watch the game. Mitchell will keep everybody updated on the site. And then after the game, as soon as it's over, I'm going to jump on Conzo Martin's Zoom call. That should be in the neighborhood of, 10:15. I'll jump on his Zoom call. I'll record that. We'll come back as soon as it's over. It takes about 2 minutes to download. I will start the post-game show. I'll play Conzo's post-game press conference for you guys. It's generally about 10 minutes long, and then we'll open up the phone lines and the comment lines and all that, and we'll chat about what happened. So Mizzou, Mississippi State, tip-off right exactly 5 minutes away on SEC Network. So we will catch you guys after the game right back here on the Burger Smokehouse Dance Class. So thanks for joining us, and hope to see you all in a couple hours.